So throw your life into his hands, day by day discern his plans. God is passionately busy loving you and me.
Every ocean wave that breaks upon the seashore, every stalk of golden weed, every silver stream that gushes down the river, every stalk of honey sweet, every eagle flying high, every worm that wriggled by, tells of fascinating news to those who dare to hope. And the message is God still loves the world. God still loves the world. So throw your life into his hands, day by day discern his plans. God is passionately busy loving you and me.
Check.
Good evening. Ideas are the harbingers of positive change. We come across numerous ideas in our day-to-day lives, some inconsequential and some awe-inspiring, but at their very core, these ideas are what spark nothing short of a revolution in our minds, emboldening us to pursue new heights.
Welcome everyone to the 5th edition of TEDxYouth at JNS. It is with great honor and privilege that we welcome you to this August event.
Ideas worth spreading. These are the 3 words that have brought us here today. We are gathered here to not just explore the ideas and journeys of some very talented and accomplished individuals, but to learn from their experiences and stories.
On that note, we extend a very warm welcome to Principal Jamnabai Nursery School, Srimati Kalpana Patange. Can we hear a huge round of applause for her? ISC Coordinator, Ms. Roslyn Athayat. Can we please hear a huge round of applause? And finally, we extend a warm welcome to all of you present here to make this event a big and special end. May I now request our team heads to present our eminent speakers with a token of appreciation. May I call upon stage Dr. Saagarika Ghoshal. Thank you, ma'am. Next up, we have our second speaker, Dr. Sewanti Limaye. Mr. Nishaad Shah. Team Plant People, Komal and Angud, sorry. We now move on to the attendee guidelines for the event. Kindly adhere to these guidelines that will be mentioned now. We request you all to keep your phones on silent and avoid flash photography at all costs. Each talk will be followed by a short question and answer session, during which the organizing team members will be passing mics to the audience members after they are recognized by our moderator.
Please avoid leaving the amphitheater during talks and performances, and feel free to reach out to any of the organizing committee members in case of any doubts or concerns. As mentioned in the schedules provided, we will have a brief interval after our third speaker.
Before we move on to our first talk, I would like to call upon stage Mr. Aakarsh Sethi and would request the team heads to please felicitate him. Without further ado, let us commence this event with our very first speaker, Dr. Saagarika Ghoshal. Dr. Saagarika Ghoshal is the founder of WWL Forum and the managing director of Matchboard, a DEI and business transformation consulting firm. Her board affiliation with various companies and HR practice has spanned over 2 decades across a spectrum of industries, including telecom, financial services, aviation, media and entertainment, and retail. Today, she will be sharing what she believes to be the future of conduct. Let's welcome her on stage with a huge round of applause.
Oh, God. Thank you so much. I'm an HR professional, and I have had 2 decades handling human beings, great human beings, and inhuman beings. So coming back to the human beings, I think I come back with an HR story itself. So an entrepreneur wanted to hire a business head. HR guys automatically came with 2 CVs, almost same kind of experience, same GPA scores, same Ivy League college, good background, professional as well as personal. So everything was just top class, but both of them were almost parallel. The entrepreneur said, okay, call them over for dinner, I'll decide. The dinner happened in a fancy restaurant. After the dinner, let's say it was candidate A and candidate B. So the entrepreneur turned to candidate A and said, you're hired, congratulations, I'll see you soon. And turned to candidate B, and the obvious, said sorry. And like all of you, the candidate B wanted to know why. So the story starts here. The entrepreneur says, do you remember when we entered the restaurant, a gatekeeper opened the door, and you were so busy talking about your ambitions, you forgot to say a thank you, but this guy did. We went to the elevator, there was an elderly lady standing. You made way for me, but that elderly lady, he helped the candidate A, and he got her in and did whatever he had to. So summing it up, you both were very polite, but candidate B, you were polite only with me, and candidate A, you were polite with almost everybody. So talking of conduct, what is conduct? The English meaning is the way we behave in a particular situation or place, right? What is the genesis of conduct? The genesis of conduct is the action, the thought, and the speech. So I have kind of jumbled up a bit, but what is important is that when you do an action, when you work on an action only, you really don't reach what is the thought level. So what was the thought level of candidate B? Candidate B actually thought that I have a world-class CV, I'll just make it, I just have to impress the entrepreneur, and I got the job. He came with that thought. The communication, what he did, his body language was arrogant. What he did, the action was that he didn't get the job. The thought level of candidate A, I don't need to explain, had a positive thought, and of course he got the job end of the day. It's a 3-level process, and all of us who believe in that, if you haven't worked at the thought level, say, for example, you're irritated about something, about a person. What happens when the person comes in front of you? You say something rude, or your body language is rude, or do something which is not pleasant. If you don't work at that level, at the word, speech level, then what happens? You go to an action which probably is irreparable. And that is what happens with the organizations as well. You know, have you heard a boss shouting? Even in educational institutions, everywhere, the boss shouts at the subordinate. What happens to the mental space and the productivity of the employee? Does he get enhanced? The answer is no. When he's been insulted by the boss, what happens is he goes spiraling low in terms of his motivation. He feels like an outsider, and nothing helps. The work doesn't get done. Look at the thought level of the manager. The manager's thought level is, I have to get the work done. And the moment you change that thought level to saying that he's part of my team member, he might need guidance, he might have an emergency, immediately your action would be, do you need any help? Do you need any guidance for this? Do you think I can do better? What happens to the mental space and the productivity of the employee? It's a no-brainer. You know, he excels, he feels included. What he did earlier, the thought process which was there, it is an anti-organization objective. You don't want people to leave or people to just go because they have not felt included in the organization. So conduct is something which, if an organization works at the conduct level, nothing will change. And if they haven't improved at the cultural level, then you will keep getting skeletons from the drawer, and no matter, these days people talk of gender sensitivity. It will keep happening because no strict rules can actually manage behavior. No temporary policing will help getting the culture in place. So it's very important that you work at the thought level, and the thought is purified, and the moment the thought is purified, your action is accordingly displayed in front of everybody. So this is what we talk of a conduct, right? Now let's come to the sixth sense. The moment we talk of sixth sense, we come back straight away to the thought, to the five senses what we have. Now I think all of you know what five senses are. So what happens? We all know sound waves are heard between 20 to 20,000 hertz. Quantum physics is although trying to explain things that there is sound below 20 and above 20,000 hertz, which is infrasonic and ultrasonic sounds, which is there, right? So what we are doing in our world and lives is we are taking decisions based on limited data available. Think of a time when we actually, Messi just talked about instinct, you know, and I think that is what it is. There are many women in this hall, and I know that every woman at one point of time, whether she is walking on the street or entering the room, will of course know if there is some ill feeling somebody has. That person wouldn't have said any word, done any gesture, but still you feel uncomfortable. What is that? That is sixth sense. All of us have it. All of us have sixth sense. Some of us have it naturally, some of us have to cultivate it, and some of us choose to keep it closed. But trust me, all the good business leaders, be it Ratan Tata, Narayan Murthy, even Steve Jobs, all of them have had an access to this untapped reality. That's why they are calm, composed, and intuitive leaders. You know, Steve Jobs a lot of times have also mentioned about when his company was taken over, he was here in India, in the mountains of Rishikesh, to untap this energy within himself, to ignite the energy within himself, to go back with new rigor. And what was that? Basically connecting with yourself. And that's why I say that futurism of conduct is future of managing your thought. So unless organizations and individuals, you know, have managed yourself at the thought level, your action will always be different from what is your core. So do this small exercise when you go back home. You know, just think about it, some irritable incident, you know, for which you probably feel like giving a punch. Go back to the thought level and start thinking, why did it happen? Why did you come to that level? Give it a little bit more positivity. You will definitely see a change in what's the action you're doing. And it happens to all of us. You know, there's nothing new. So coming back to that, the reality of today's workplace, the future leaders, the companies who are going to make it to the future, because most of them will shut if they don't actually make amends. And the organizations who are the future workplaces, all of them have to develop this resilience, empathy. Otherwise, if you don't develop this sixth sense, the business conduct as your ears and eyes, you will get a surprise one day, and out of the blue there will be two cultures which will emerge. One culture which is there postered in your walls, plastered everywhere in the organization, proclaimed in your website, and another one will be what your employees, your consumers, your customers will experience on day-to-day basis. And I'm sure the new world, the future of workplaces is going to make sure that there's no room for mistakes. The reality of contactless economy is going to be true sooner or later. Working from home, remote working, gig economy, etc., is going to happen, we have already started to see the glimpses of it. And in this contactless world, if all of us are not having that empathy to deal with one human being to another, where we'll have flatter structures, no hierarchies, nobody to shout at, and if we don't stop looking at the rear view mirror, if we don't stop doing what we are doing today, we will never be able to go ahead and making sure that we reboot our organizations, ourselves, change the patterns, making our own conditioning, which has been for years for various things which has happened in our workplaces and in our own lives. Unless we change the conditioning of our mind, our thought process, we are either going to be extinct or making sure that we don't do business the way we want. So with that, I want to sum up. Why am I talking about managing your thought and end of the day, managing the future of the conduct, what each one of you are going to be the future leaders, if you don't imbibe. I think the world is changing in the digitized world of tomorrow. It is very important to have the future of conduct, the sixth sense, being conscious and in peripheral vision. Otherwise, what will come out as a culture will be completely different from what you actually think about. So the impact will be straight on the culture of the organization, of your homes, of your well-being itself. Second is empathy cannot be organization-driven. And with organization, I mean even institutions cannot be driven. It has to be lived by each one of you who's going to be the future leaders, each one of them who are the leaders today and each one of them who are going to be leaders tomorrow. You have to drive it in the new workways. You have to bring in kindness culture. You have to start looking at things differently. And lastly, futurism of conduct is managing of thought at a transparent level. What happens when you're transparent? Everything can be seen. You can see each other, whether you're right or wrong. So unless you're transparent at that level and see what is coming, your communication level will not improve. So the moment you're transparent, your communication is bang on. You're ready with your business, you're ready to face your employees. You can also predict. You know if there is any unrest. So there'll be no undercurrents happening. You will exactly know what's going to happen. And lastly, the results, which is the business success, is bound to follow. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Dr. Saagarika, for the enlightening talk. We will now be opening the floor to questions. Yes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed that. I really resonate with the fact that you said that empathy cannot be organization-driven, right? But organizations can be empathy-driven. So as like members of teams or leaders, like what can you do as part of your culture, or how you behave to kind of try and bring that as part of your company culture? How can you push that sentiment of being empathetic or working with kindness?
Okay, I want to give a short and sweet answer. Empathy is the moment you start seeing from another's eyes. Empathy is when you start hearing from others' ears. Empathy is the moment you start feeling from the heart of others. So basically what I want to say is, the moment you start putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, as a leader or as an individual, you will see the world differently. The perception, and that's why I said what sixth sense does is, when you listen to your instincts, it expands your perception. So you're not only relying on the five senses, what is giving you the information. The decisions are not limited. You are not making your decisions with the limited data. You're actually looking at things beyond, and that's why empathy brings in a lot to your own purification process. And not only individual, but I'm also talking in the context of organization. The moment organization starts putting themselves in the employee shoes, in the consumer shoes, in the customer shoes, they will see the pinpoint. Otherwise, sitting in an Eiffel Tower, anybody can build a castle, right? Thank you. Okay, so very valid point. What do you mean by two cultures? Two cultures means that, say you have decided that we will all be honest, we will do business with integrity, we will, so that's how, if anybody, I'm sure all of you must have seen the vision, mission statement of any company. Not very different from one to another, They're normally largely that we will do business with integrity, we will help getting the best customer experience, and so on and so forth. But you have actually not worked on your people processes, on your business ethics, on basically on the ground, if you haven't imbibed the rules and the policies, what's there. If you have not hired somebody who has, see, we cannot be two people, so everything has to be holistic, right? I cannot be responsible in my personal space and irresponsible at my workplace, right? So if you have hired somebody who's irresponsible, there will be, so with the rules and regulations, that irresponsive person will be, controlled for a while. But then end of the day, it will come out somehow or the other. So that's why I said that one culture, which will be there, plastered all over the wall, which will say, we believe in best customers experience. We believe in best employee experience. Employee first, customer second. Kind of things. Lots of things can be plastered on the wall, proclaimed in your website, but end of the day, your customers will feel that there is delay in delivery, customer pain points are not sorted out, employees are leaving, and so on and so forth, So, so haven't you heard that people leave the organization? The top 5 reasons why people leave the organization is bosses' conduct, but it never gets captured. It never gets captured anywhere, because the employee who's leaving is thinking of moving on. Why would I actually, bother to talk about things negatively? But end of the day, when you have to run the organization with actually bare minimum talent, and you keep losing your critical talent, and you don't even know why they are going, because you really don't have your intelligence system in place, then someday you will get a big, great resignation. The undercurrents will be there, and then you will only get to know when finally the person has decided to resign and leave. So you have lost a talent, your money, your expenses. The most important thing is the knowledge.
Thank you for the lovely responses, ma'am. I'll now hand the mic to our host to introduce our next speaker.
You will want this?
Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the presence of our sixth and final speaker, Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane. Doctors are the lifeline of society and in several ways, superheroes that often remain unsung. Our next speaker is one such hero, Dr. Sewanti Limaye. Dr. Limaye is the Director of Medical and Precision Oncology at Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital in Bombay. She has worked as a faculty at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Harvard Medical School, and Columbia University Medical Center in New York before relocating to India. We take immense pride in inviting her on stage for the next talk as she shares her experienced perspective about the silver lining in her profession.
Hi, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Sewanti Limaye. I'm a cancer specialist and I lead the medical oncology and precision oncology program at Sir H.N. Reliance Foundation Hospital. It's in Girgaon, Mumbai. Thank you for having me. I'm here today to talk about silver lining in cancer care. Personalized precision oncology, and I'm just going to share with you what really motivated me to find the silver lining and where am I in the process and how this is a driving force in cancer care. So to begin with, I'll tell you a short cancer story. And that cancer story is actually about a disease that has been feared over the decades, over centuries. We have always known of cancer as the emperor of all maladies. Cancer has been associated with death and dying. If you look at the slide at the back and the top left corner, 1 in 2 men and 1 in 3 women will be touched with cancer in their lifetime. That's a stark reality. That's also with this realization that cancer is ever evolving. This publication says 9 heads of the Hydra. Someone has said 10 heads of the Ravana. And how cancer has different faces, it's ever transforming, it's evolving, it's difficult to capture, difficult to treat, difficult to get past. And the outcomes truly have been challenged over decades. A concept called personalized precision oncology has taken storm more recently in the last decade. What does it mean? It just means to study that patient's cancer in a focused way to understand the biology of that disease, that tumor, and then strategize treatment designed in particular to that patient, their tumor, by understanding the biology and striking the disease where it hurts the most, to then improve outcomes. And this concept has been proven with multiple studies. Whether you do a biopsy and you study the genomics, the multiomics of the tumor, or if you can't do a biopsy, can you do a liquid biopsy with a blood test with which you can then understand the cancer. It's all about understanding the pathway that drives the disease. It's all about putting the signature genomic pathway of that particular tumor to then strategize therapy better. It's about the right treatment for the right patient at the right time, every time. This is an old concept. I call it a cliche. It's an old concept because when we give blood transfusion as a doctor, you don't give unmatched blood, you match the blood. As a chemotherapy doctor, I also do targeted therapy and immunotherapy. As a chemotherapy doctor, I calculate body surface area and then I give chemotherapy as per a patient's body surface area. This is not something that can just be given one size fits all. So again, precision, personalized, age-old. If you have a hormone-positive breast cancer patient, that's when you give the hormone. Again, a very old concept. But what happened? Why did this become a new application in cancer care? Because of a disease called chronic myeloid leukemia. In the 1990s, there was a magic pill that was discovered. It was called imatinib or Gleevec. It's a Novartis drug. There's a fusion gene which could be inhibited by this pill. The Times called it magic bullet. With this bullet, you could hit the disease, and if you see the curves, the Kaplan-Meier curves on the left side, the survival went from 20% to 90% for these patients. We have 30-year after the fact survivors of this clinical trial living 3 decades as if nothing happened with a disease that would have killed them at diagnosis or maybe within 5 years of diagnosis. Most of them at large have lived beyond 3 decades to tell the story. The idea of precision oncology is actually to then raise the bar, utilize chemotherapy, targeted therapy, immunotherapy, what have you, to increase the survival in all comers. That red line, the curve of survival that is at the top, 90% survival for all, is the vision. My journey into precision oncology started as a young resident trainee. This was in New York. I was at New York University. I was a resident there, and I went to do my first oncology rotation at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. And that's where the journey of seeking the silver lining starts. I was in awe. I was awestruck by the patients who I came across. I came across the seekers, the patients who were going all out to seek better care, the patients who were seeking the silver lining, the patients who were seeking the light at the end of a dark tunnel, the patients who were audacious to hope, the patients who lived on because they sought better care. I went into oncology not because of the science of oncology, but because of the spirit of oncology. I say this all the time. I felt I was in awe. There was nothing else that I could do in my life other than oncology. Because of the patients, because of how they wanted to live when they were abreast with such a stark diagnosis, with death and dying, with such morbidity, mortality, still they wished to live, they wished to fight. This was the time when I read the book, The Anatomy of Hope. When I wrote my personal statement for my fellowship, I wrote all about this book. The book was written by Dr. Jerome Groopman from BI Deaconess in Harvard Med School. And he describes many, many patients in this book, patients who lived with the audacity of hope, with the courage that hope brings, and how they fought their disease in the wake of such a stark diagnosis. I also was fortunate to sit across in a talk that was given by Dr. Rockefeller. Dr. Rockefeller was in second generation of the Rockefeller family. Those who know would know that there is a Rockefeller Center of Research all across Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Dr. Rockefeller had been diagnosed with chronic myeloid leukemia in early 2000s. The drug had not been approved by FDA. He was one of the people who appealed for the drug approval in a fast track through FDA to get the drug available to him and to 200 patients in addition who were petitioning for early approval of this drug, and he had lived on. He went on to work for the Doctors Without Borders and to serve mankind, to serve patients all across. Later, he would then advocate for availability of Gleevec, imatinib, in India, off patent at a lesser cost. He became one of the largest voices. His talk was very powerful. I was touched, I was transformed. I took this message to heart. One another thing that happened during the Sloan Kettering Cancer Center exposure rotations was my HER2 story. I was asked to work on a 2,000 patient retrospective review where we were looking at a specific type of breast cancer called HER2 positive breast cancer. There was a gene amplification in HER2. 20% of breast cancer patients have that. Advanced breast cancer patients with HER2 amplification were actually given a novel drug called trastuzumab, Herceptin, and their disease melted away. As I did this project, I worked on this project night after my residency days would get over, I was touched by this story. There was a silver lining to advanced patients. These patients were living on. There was this magical drug. So the CML and the HER2 story, and fast forward to then, my next place of training, which is Long Island Jewish, Albert Einstein University. And then I remember asking my chief fellow, Dr. Yehuda Libowitz, Yehuda, why do you want to become a lung cancer doctor? Every patient dies with lung cancer. Unbeknownst to me, there was a storm brewing, a storm in lung cancer practice, where there was going to be a revolution and it was going to transform everything that was happening to lung cancer and outcomes. It was a storm that had turned the outcomes in lung cancer so much so that lung cancer had become a poster child of precision oncology, of personalized therapy. This is when I was at Dana-Farber Cancer Center. I was a junior faculty there in Harvard Med School. And this is way back, 2009. I had dual appointments. I was working as an early drug development phase 1 person, where I was seeing novel drug development, novel pathways emerging in cancer care, novel applications, diseases transforming. Lung cancer was up front. It was the poster child. There was EGFR pathway emerging. There was ALK pathway emerging. There was HER2. In the study that we did with patients who had novel genes, we found head and neck patient with HER2 positive disease and treated with HER2 inhibitor with transformative results, transformative outcomes. And there was a feature that was ran on me and my patient where there was HER2 targeted in a non-classic situation, non-canonical situation, where results were transformative, really awe-inspiring results. Through the Dana-Farber experience, one of the things that came out was a remarkable realization that pathways in cancer care were exploding. And patients were seeking these pathways because people want to live. That's the seeking, that's the story of silver lining that comes through not just NYU, not just Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, not just Dana-Farber, but everywhere. And now I'm at Columbia, where Columbia Presbyterian, I was a consultant, and I, at that time, was nominated to lead one of the arms of the most ambitious precision trial that had ever been structured in cancer care called NCI Match Trial. I wrote the Arm B of this trial. It was a 40-arm trial with 40 different pathways, many, many drug combinations, and you saw patients seeking this trial all across the country. 1,100 sites, 6,000 patients getting screened. Patients were coming for participation in the trial. Why? They were seeking the pathways. They were seeking the silver lining. They were looking for hope. In the face of a tough disease, in face of death and dying, it was the spirit to live on that had survived and sought more direction, more solution. And it was amazing to see this transformation happening, playing out. I was touched for life. The revolution was happening. The tsunami had come, and I was transformed forever. Fast forward to my time here. 6 years ago, I came back to India for family reasons. I thought I was actually completely lost. The system was different. The economic constraints were very obvious. How am I going to practice precision? How am I going to do these high-end tests? Where am I going to find the novel drugs? Is it going to be possible? It was ahead of its time, so I was being ridiculed, I was being questioned. How can someone practice precision? How can someone be that specific when there is a whole host of patients to be treated, when the problem is so large? But actually, I have to say here, the inspiration again came from the patients. I didn't have to do much, they found me. I really didn't have to do much. I had to pursue what I believed in. And the seekers found their silver lining, continue to find their silver lining. I now run a precision initiative where we try to understand the patient's biology, that specific tumor's biology. I founded a team where we could discuss tough cases. I run a molecular tumor board at my center. I run one at a national level called Impact India International. I also founded a company called ILON Precision Oncology to this effect. Because when you want to deliberate on tough cases, you can't do it alone. You should not be doing it alone. It's a cohesive effort. Over the years, that's something I've learned through multiple institutions, that this isn't a single person's job. This is really a tough disease where people need to come together to find the solution. And no one takes center stage. It's actually a joint effort. That's the reason to really found multiple such boards where we could sit down and deliberate on patient solutions to be able to provide the right kind of care. But the seekers have come. The lady from Surat with the brain metastasis who responded to osimertinib, which is a pill, over a period of a month. I thought she would never walk. The next I saw, when I went to the clinic, she walked in. The gentleman from Nepal who has a mutation called exon 14 mutation, again responded to the pills. The celebrity with the high PD-L1 status whose cancer is gone in 2 months of immunotherapy, 2 years of immunotherapy. The lady from Bangladesh who had the NTOC fusion, The gentleman from Dubai who has HER2 mutation, and again his treatment is with targeted therapy. What about the girl from IIM, who really wanted to fight, who found me, whose family found me? We lost her. But her father came to see me much later. And he said, Dr. Limaye, you treat differently. In 5 years, either you will transform the system or the system will transform you. I'm happy to say I have done the latter. We are working today to really transform the outcomes in oncology. We are working today together to transform the results that we see. We are working very hard to separate death and dying with the word cancer. Cancer starts with a C. Cancer should be associated with cure. Cancer should be associated with chronic. If we have patients who are on immunotherapy and live their life with preserved quality of life, live their life as nothing happened, live their life with equal strength, whether they are young, old, frail, elderly, that's an achievement. You can see a slide up there. This particular patient's 1/4 face is affected with disease. When the patient came to me, he was on a wheelchair. All his medications had been stopped. People had given up. But the left side of the slide tells you, with immunotherapy, the entire disease went away. It's been 3 years now. He's doing well. He followed me from one hospital to the other. He's doing well, he lives on. This is yet another slide that talks about application of immunotherapy in tumor-agnostic way, which means crisscross. You have a message from lung cancer, you can bring it to gastric cancer. If you have a message from breast cancer, you can bring it to head and neck cancer. No longer are we operating in silos. This is called tumor-agnostic application. And here it is in a gastric cancer woman, where if you look at the center image, that's a PET scan with Christmas tree pattern of disease, and the entire disease has gone away. It's been 2 years, we just stopped her treatment. Immunotherapy is going to be omnipresent. Many disease conditions. It's going to transform results in oncology. There are so many emerging targets. You just need to find them. You just need to investigate. You just need to look for that silver lining into the cloud. I also practice something called reverse engineering. I believe in testing in the lab, not on the patient. I do a lot of organoids with the help of multiple companies out here in India, some abroad. We are able to perform these tests. I was touched by the concept of N of 1. Each patient is special. This is a concept that lives on, most affected by a trial called I Predict trial. There's a homegrown trial ran here in India called Resilient trial, which looked at N of 1. Each patient is special. Each patient is specific. You design the therapy according to that patient's biology, that tumor's biology, that patient's signature, that tumor's signature. One of my final thoughts here, we need to piece it all together for that patient. You need time to understand the biology of that tumor and design the therapy according to what the tumor is telling you. Some of my colleagues joke, is the tumor talking to you? But you have to set aside time to really hear what the tumor has to say. But the biggest news here, the biggest message here, the biggest inspiration to me comes from the patients, comes from their will to live, their will to defeat, their will to survive, their will to conquer. I become very small when such a giant thought process comes in. I hope to really contribute to changing outcomes of cancer care in India. That I have figured out is my calling. Hope can be courageous. Hope is contagious. Hope can be disruptive. Hope can be audacious. The audacity of hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk now. We'll be taking some questions, ma'am.
Could you leave my last slide on?
Dr. Sewanti,
Yes.
if you're ready.
Yes.
All right. Do we have any questions on the floor? Sure, the individual at the back. Janad, there.
Hi, thank you so much for the talk. So there's this book called Illness as a Metaphor by Susan Sontag, and it talks about the societal perceptions of illnesses like cancer and TB. So in the book, it was mentioned that especially in the 1960s and 70s, when someone encountered cancer, it was seen as the end, and there's possibly no return. So do you think this perception has changed in recent times? And also for people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, is it still accessible for them, or how is the perception of the disease?
So brilliant question, because I work in a corporate center. I feel like I serve 1% of India, and there is a nagging pain that I'm not able to serve the masses. For that very reason, I've started a journey. I call it a road show. And I've been now traveling to different cities to try and raise awareness, go to the masses, reach out to the public who wish to live, who are seeking, and empower them with the knowledge of precision, of personalized therapy application, that there is an option. Answering your question, it is a big challenge to bring precision to the masses, because tests are expensive, drugs are expensive. How do we get them there? And I was at a patient advocacy meeting just 2 days back where I raised this because I was representing research in oncology. And I think you have to now figure out where are the funds and how do we bring the funds to the ones who are in need. And clinical trials are one of the biggest such efforts which could bring access to good cancer care in India. It could bring access to novel therapies, novel drugs, novel testing options. I ran 22 trials already at the corporate hospital I worked at, and I intend to build up a clinical trial division here at the next center that I'm working at. And I feel this is a reality. The poverty in India, the limited resources are a reality. 90% of the patients that I served on my clinical trials at Komal Hospital, where I worked before this, were below poverty line. So I think we have to figure out ways in the limitations that we live with to get this kind of cancer care over to the masses. And you have to work with diligence, with dedication, and with hope to get it out there. But I think the biggest message is to go out to the masses and give the story. Because consumer, the patient, wishes to live. You have to just get the message out there, and they will figure out ways to get there.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That'll be all for the questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. When we were writing an introduction for our very next speaker, we could not think of any better words that would encapsulate his qualities. Let's welcome Mr. Aakarsh Sethi. Mr. Aakarsh is a senior product manager at Infinx Healthcare, an innovative and scalable payment lifecycle solutions provider for healthcare practices. He's responsible for driving and executing product strategy for Infink's patient access products. A graduate of the University of Illinois with a bachelor's in electrical engineering and a master's in technology management, Mr. Sethi is a distinguished public speaker, product manager, and AI engineer. Please welcome him on stage with thunderous applause as he shares the unrecognized importance of product management.
All right. I saw some of you probably posting on your Instagram stories, so I felt like doing it too. I have a question for you. Have you ever wondered, though, why a feature like stories exists on a social networking application like Instagram? More than that, have you ever thought about how it was built the way it was built? To function the way it functions, to look the way it looks. Once it was built, how was it exposed to all the millions and millions of users that Instagram has? Let me pose another question here. Have you ever thought about who in an organization decides or answers these questions? Is it the engineering team? Is it the marketing team, the business development team, the design team? Well, the answer is yes. Hopefully, it's a collaborative decision between all of these functions. But is there one role that is primarily accountable for determining the success of a product? And in recent times, especially in technology companies, the answer is yes. That role is called a product manager within the discipline of product management. Unfortunately, not a lot of people know about this role, and there's also a scarcity of formal education and resources within this discipline. A few years ago, I went back to university to do my master's in technology management. And I was very excited because this was a unique degree that aligned with product management, and I was really hoping to learn a lot about business technology. I remember during our orientation week, I was introducing myself, I was talking about product management, and one of the professors very enthusiastically came up to me and said, "Hey, I too was a project manager." And one person laughed. I promise you, in a room full of product managers, that joke would have really landed. If you want to annoy product managers, just call them project managers, right? So in many ways, though, that sentence is quite representative of how people think about this profession. So what I did was I tried to evaluate if there were other students who felt the same way, who wanted more resources within this discipline, and I got an overwhelmingly positive response. So I started University of Illinois' first student organization on product management, which at the time was a handful of its kind within the entire country too. The goal there was to equip talented students with the right skills and attributes to be successful product creators and managers. Something that I intend to do today, and I think 10 minutes is enough time to do that, right? So let's try. The way I want to approach this is I want to talk about a little bit about the chronology, and the evolution of this discipline. And then we can naturally get into what this role encapsulates. And then, I want to talk about my own perspective of what lies within the core of this principle of product management, what unites different types of product managers in order to have a crucial and pivotal impact on the success of a product delivery. So let's start by looking at the history a little bit. Traditionally, technology firms have operated in a way where, they create novel technology and then they find a problem to solve in the market. If you look at Texas Instruments, a very successful company, TI, in the early 80s, had launched this 16-bit microprocessor, which was far superior to the existing 8-bit microprocessor that they had. There was no market need for something like this, However, when they didn't get the response that they saw in the market, instead of listening to market signals, they actually doubled down and used this expensive piece of hardware to launch a home computer in the 80s, which clearly, had no utility in the market at that time. Now, there were several reasons why that home computer failed. One of them definitely is this approach of really pushing a solution when a problem doesn't exist, right? Clearly, TI is not going to hire me anytime soon, so let's carry on with that. So there emerged this need, really, of finding a role of someone who can be customer-centric and put customers first, find the problems in the market, and then devise solutions specifically to address those problems. The next thing is about product development life cycles. Traditionally, product development life cycles were very long. Sales and marketing would sign contracts and dump the work essentially on engineering. And engineering would take 12, 15, 18 months, in a uniquely opaque silo and build something which then they would expose to the customer. And many times it would just be vastly different, right? So what this meant was major overhauls, major revamps, which would require a lot more time, but also a lot more investment. So there emerged this need of a more iterative and agile way of product development that regularly sought feedback and was not afraid of modifications and scope changes, with which emerged the need of a role of someone who could pick right execution frameworks to guarantee the success of product delivery. Lastly, I want to talk about the silos that were created traditionally. We used to have marketing teams working individually without interacting with engineering teams. Marketing folks couldn't speak the language of engineers. Engineers had no penchant of speaking the language of marketing, to be honest. So again, there emerged a need of someone who can talk cross-functionally, who can speak the language of marketing and engineering. So with this, all of this really builds up to the creation of a cross-functional role that can be accountable for the overall success of the product. Someone who can analyze markets, can qualify and quantify opportunities, can really empathize with customers, understand their problems and devise solutions, work with engineering teams to build and manage that solution, and then take it to the market. And in many ways, this really encapsulates what this role does, the role of a product manager. Yet, there is a lot of confusion, right? And that exists because within organizations, based on their scale and their growth, product managers are really asked to do different subsets of what I just talked about. Some are more focused on tech, some are more focused on marketing, some are more focused on growth. So to me, the way I see this and what I feel at the very core level unites different product managers or different entities who want to play this role to positively impact a successful product delivery comes down to three things, which is at a very simple and core level. One, being a problem identifier. Two, being a problem solver. and 3 being a value generator. So we'll delve a little bit deeper into all 3 of these through the lens of my own professional experience. And let me set some context before that, right? I work at Infinix Healthcare, which is a healthcare technology company in the US market. The US healthcare system, within that ecosystem, the insurance companies play a major role, right? From hospital systems and healthcare systems, insurance carriers or companies are a major source of their revenue because when they provide a service to their patients, a large chunk of that is, or the price of that is reimbursed from the insurance companies. Insurance companies, on the other hand, do not want to be overbilled or overcharged, right? So they have this program called prior authorization where they want to essentially do clinical checks on every case where a physician wants to recommend an expensive procedure to a patient, for example. Insurance companies want to validate that there is in fact clinical need for that. So say I have a thumb injury and my physician wants me to get an MRI. They actually have to send this long request to the insurance company where they provide all my case details, clinical notes, to prove that an MRI in fact is required and that, you know, more or less expensive X-ray would not suffice. This whole process of requesting a prior authorization involves expensive resources from healthcare systems like nurses, taking time away from crucial patient care and just devoting to this administrative process that can be very lengthy and arduous, to be honest. So we looked at this whole process and we thought that what if we could give them some of this time back? Could it positively impact patient care, right? So we found a problem worth solving. Let's talk about value. Right? And when we talk about value, value isn't just from the frame of a customer, right? Value has to be preserved and generated for your organization as well. Let's talk about the customer first though. So within this case, from a customer point of view, how can we generate value for them? We can generate value for them if we make this whole process less intensive, which is make it more cost effective. We can make it shorter, we can give them more time back, and we can make sure that these prior authorizations are obtained more reliably so that patients can come in and get the care that they need to get. The second part from an organization point of view is how do we do this in a way that's profitable for the organization as well, right? So we have to develop whatever solution that we do develop in a cost-effective way, and it has to be easily replicable to other users within the market so that we can scale seamlessly. So that is the concept of value. Let's talk about the solution now. The thing about solutions is solution has to consider both of the first two things, right? There has to be a problem worth solving, and then the solution has to maximize the value in every facet of these things. So the other thing about solutions is that customers always like to be the experts on solutions, but you have to treat customers as the experts on the problem, not the solution, right? When we tried to look at this space, we saw a lot of competitors doing what customers were asking, which is devise a simple automated solution that could automate requesting prior authorizations to insurance companies. And a lot of those competitors failed doing that because of several reasons, primarily lack of electronic infrastructure by the insurance companies and just the complexity of the clinical nature of some of these tasks. So we tried a different approach here, an approach of really augmented intelligence, really pioneering augmented intelligence within the space, where we use traditional forms of automation that other competitors were using, along with some very unique predictive insights using machine learning. And we augmented that by human and clinical specialists that could come in anytime technology failed, right? So we can use them as a crutch, essentially. And what this approach really allowed us to do was comprehensively maximize value of being cost effective, doing the task more reliably, and providing time back to our customers. Now, to conclude, let's take a step back and let's look at product management. When you familiarize yourself a little bit more within this discipline, you'll hear a lot of things about product managers. You'll hear them being called a mini CEO of a product. You'll hear them being called the voice of the customer, or as my engineer friends say, the good-for-nothings in a company. I feel like there's a little bit of truth in all of these three things. But, if I have to leave you with something, I'll say whether as a product manager or as another role where you want to positively impact the success of your product or your feature, just be a good problem identifier, a problem solver, and a value generator, and you'll be just fine. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir, for the talk. We will now open our floor to questions. Sorry, we've already received the questions through our audience viewing of the live stream. So, what problems have you faced with product management in the past?
Yeah, I think one of the unique challenges here is that the role still isn't very clearly defined. So you constantly find yourself stepping on other people's toes, right? Your role is to unite, but sometimes if you don't do it the right way, you end up dividing between the different functions. So I think that's another attribute that a good product manager has to possess, being a uniter.
So, how did you know that you wanted to be a product manager?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there isn't a lot of formal education within this space. And, I wasn't introduced to this profession through any formal channels. But, a while ago, I was doing an internship in San Francisco at this hardware Internet of Things startup. And I just ended up meeting someone who worked at Yahoo at that time. And he was telling me that, what he does is he's responsible for Yahoo Messenger, and he decides how the application should work, how it should look, so on and so forth. And, I was like, okay, so you're an engineer, right? He's like, no, I don't code. I define how these things should work. And in my mind, I was like, that's exactly what I want to do.
Thank you for the lovely responses, sir. We will now proceed for the interval. Please reconvene here in 15 minutes for an extraordinary dance performance by our very talented students.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome, awesome.
Kindly settle down. The event will be resuming shortly. Welcome back. We shall be resuming now. It is rightly said that rhythm is the sound of motion. Proving these very words true today is Avant-Garde, our in-house dance troupe presenting a hypnotic fusion of two Indian classical dance forms. Could we have another round of applause for our dancers? Following that incredible performance are Komal, Garg and Angud Bhalla, the founders of Plant People, a new age plant nursery, green decor and landscaping firm. Komal and Angud, who started their journey in the media industry, now follow their passion in a completely unrelated field, plants. They're an incredible inspiration that one can make a living with their passion and that taking risks in life is worth it, and that talk conveys just that. Please welcome the Plant People.
Thank you.
Hello? Yeah, all right.
Hello. Hello. Yep.
Okay, thanks a lot for having the two of us here. And I guess we'll get straight into the talk. Am I audible?
Hello. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there are many of us here, and I'm sure a lot of you have plants at home. They're growing in popularity day by day. It's the in thing in today's day and age. But the concept of the common house plant is a lot older than we might think. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, they grew ornamental plants in decorative pots and even cultivated small trees in terracotta vessels. Across the world, over 2,000, 3,000 years ago, potted plants were shown at exhibitions and bought by people. Across the centuries, botanists and explorers transported thousands of exotic species across continents, and houseplants found their way into the homes of aristocracy and common folk alike. So clearly, we've been keeping houseplants for thousands of years, and one would think we would have gotten really good at it. But the fact is, in our modern times, most of us lack the basic skills and knowledge to look after plants or to do gardening. How much light does my plant need? What kind of soil should I put it in? What kind of manure should I give it? In what season? Why are the leaves turning yellow, brown, or black?
We have been running a plant nursery for the last 6 years, and we routinely come across folks who seem to know very little about plants, to the extent that they're almost scared of keeping plants. Just the other day, one gentleman called us in panic and saying his plant is dying. We asked him what is the watering schedule that he's been following. So he very proudly tells us about how he's been spraying the leaves every day. Spraying. Now imagine you're in a desert, you're thirsty, you're lost, your lips are parched, you can barely walk, you're so dehydrated, you have absolutely no hope. And then you suddenly see someone carrying a flask of water. You desperately ask him for some. But the guy, instead of giving you a drink, splashes it all over your face. Is that going to quench your thirst? So spraying is just like that, you know. So, and we hear so many of these.
There are times when someone is gifted a plant, an unwilling recipient, someone who is not familiar with plants. And they call us and they behave as if it's a creature from some strange alien world that they've never seen and know nothing at all about. Then there's the common complaint about my plant is not growing at all. Look at it. It's the same size, it's the same height. It's not got any new leaves, and it's been one whole day since I brought it home. You can't pull a child by the arms and legs, and expect him or her to become taller overnight. It just doesn't work like that.
It may sound exaggerated, but trust us when we say we've heard the most absurd things when it comes to houseplants. Someone will call and say, oh, the flowers have wilted. I think my plant is dying. Another person actually asked us, can I spray paint the leaves to make them look a different color? Spray paint leaves of a plant. Actually happened. Then there was another friend of ours who was gifted an artificial plant. He went on to water it for 2 whole years. Not joking.
It's true.
True story. True story. He went on to water it for 2 whole years before somebody actually told him it's a fake plant. And these people are all CEOs, they're engineers, they're whatnots, that we're talking about. They're successful people from all walks of life. So clearly there is a disconnect, a growing disconnect between man and nature. There is definitely a gap that needs to be filled. It's a very basic yet necessary skill that most of us seem to be lacking, which is how to take care of plants.
Now, the information is out there, but it does not actively find its way into our lives other than through the occasional Google search. There has never been a greater need to introduce gardening and plant study as a subject, both formally and informally, to treat it as an essential life skill, given the growing importance of greenery in our lives and our modern cities. Think about it. Many of us in cities like Bombay, Delhi, in polluted, crowded metros, we've bought air purifiers to improve the air quality, to help our families and children breathe better. Now imagine if you could teach those children the basic skills to freely grow and nurture the oldest and the best air purifier there is.
We believe gardening is very much like cycling or swimming. You learn it young and it stays with you for the rest of your lives. It's not something that one forgets. Then why not equip young minds with basics to do with plant care? Research has time and again proven the physical and the psychological benefits of gardening as an activity, of having plants around you. Let's have a look at some of these benefits.
So firstly, it's an immersive outdoor activity, and it's a great way to get children, and in fact all of us, away from our gadgets, devices, laptops, whatnots. We're glued to technology the whole day. It's a great excuse to step out, get a healthy dose of vitamin D. On a serious note, a hands-on gardening experience for children is a great way to give them first-hand, real-world information which is not being fed through a screen. Moreover, the more we teach children about plants, the more they'll relate to them. Think about it. They eat, they sleep, they breathe, they drink, and they grow just like each other. Even pointing out these basic similarities is a great way to cultivate empathy and develop a deeper appreciation of all living things.
You know how when we get a pet into the house, how children are naturally encouraged to be more nurturing, more caring, more responsible. The same happens with plants. If we introduce plant care to children early enough, it will have the same effect on them. And it will further sensitize them towards nature. These days, children are under so much pressure, to excel at everything. In such a scenario, again, gardening would be a very, very helpful tool because it releases endorphins that help battle stress and anxiety, leading to overall better mental health.
Adding to that, gardening also improves brain function. It puts us in close contact with beneficial microorganisms in the soil, which test our immunity, which improve it in the process. Studies have time and again shown that people who are closer to nature have lower blood pressure, better sleep quality. After all, it's a meditative activity. It teaches us to be patient. It gives us a purpose, a sense of pride. The list of benefits goes on and on.
Personally, for me, I was fortunate that I've grown up seeing my mother being an avid gardener. She was always collecting exotic plant species. She was mostly found tinkering in her garden, getting her hands dirty. Most mornings, she could barely wait to finish her chores and send us off to school so she could get busy with her plants and her garden. And my father, who was in the army, he has served at the front lines many a times, but he has also commanded a special ecological battalion that planted lakhs of trees in the deserts of Rajasthan. Needless to say, both my parents have acted as great inspirations for me when it comes to learning about plants and nature.
But this cannot be a privilege that only a few enjoy. We believe all children should have access to organized channels for learning the essentials to do with plants and gardening. Look at schools. They have open spaces, they have greenery, they have parks. It's a great starting point. It's a natural laboratory where children can freely explore, observe, and learn. Apart from academia, we believe the movement should be driven through various other establishments such as RWAs, community spaces like public parks, sports clubs, and of course, neighborhood garden centers. Theoretically, we could teach children the most common houseplant varieties, their names, benefits, their care, and seasonal aspects. In terms of practical knowledge, we could do activities such as repotting of a plant, propagation techniques, pruning, fertilizing. It's an endless field, and there are many, many things to learn. One can also sensitize kids from an early age towards sustainable activities such as composting and making bioenzymes which can replace commercial chemical cleaners. All of these learnings will prove to be useful throughout one's life.
Angud and I are soon going to be parents ourselves. Thank you. And as cliched as it may sound, we would love to raise our children in a world where plants, gardening, nature are considered to be subjects equally as important as any other subject. Thank you. In conclusion, we would like to leave you with a simple question to ponder upon. When to enrich the lives of our children and to ensure their all-round development, we encourage them to take up varied classes like karate classes, dance classes, swimming classes, language classes, craft classes. Why not gardening classes?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angud sir and Komal ma'am. Nature indeed makes our lives much more pleasurable. We will now be taking questions.
Nobody has any questions.
Is there something that you would like to add after your speeches? Any? Oh yes, please ask a question.
Well, I have a 9-year-old and, we have a small place in Karjat. We teach her how to do composting and everything, the plants. She has a plant which she is a parent of and all that, we try and do as much as possible. But today's kids are so, distracted with many other things. They probably, like you said, that think about putting them in gardening class. There aren't any teachers, who are good in gardening around you. So probably after school, from 7 to 5, they have come back from school. You might not be wanting to send them too far. So what's the way, what's the way forward? Because I don't think so there are any gardening classes, even if the intent is there.
So we do feel that, when we were actually thinking of this topic, ma'am, we mostly feel that it should be started in schools because that's the easiest place for you to pick up something. Anything beyond schools is then up to parents, whether they have the kids have the time, etc., etc. So if even at a very basic level, it can be started in schools, and through the classes, through the grades, it can go to a slightly more advanced level. That would be the greatest thing.
It's, if I may, okay, so it's a question of prioritizing as well. Driving is a life skill. At some point of time, we all take out the time to learn how to drive, whether at a school or whether, big brother teaches me or papa teaches me or mama teaches me. So I guess the challenge is also, is gardening important enough? But you look at the reality. We're all desperate for a piece of nature. We're all living in polluted cities. The kids of today are the ones who will have to deal with this future, who will have to find ways to make their lives richer with nature, So it's, again, and this is all a lot of, gas about being idealistic and this is what the future should be. I get it, but somewhere it has to start. And with schools, you have extra co-curricular activities, you have SUPW. It's a small step, but somewhere it has to start. You need experts who will have to put together a soft curriculum. You need people from academics. You need people from horticulture. You need botanists. It will take some time and effort, but I think somewhere it has to start. It's now or never, essentially.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Yes, miss. No?
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
I just knew if it could be done, it had to be done. And I did it. This quote perfectly captures the spirit of our next speaker, Mr. Nishaad Shah. A proud alumnus of the Jamnabai Nursery School batch of 2012, Nishaad Shah is a seasoned sportsperson who has represented India at various tournaments, including the US Open, German Open, Hong Kong Open, Indian Open, Asian Junior Championships, and Global Cadet Challenge, to name a few. He's a two-time silver medalist at the Iran Open, as well as a Maharashtra and Delhi state champion, and an All-India University Championship gold medalist. He went on to study at the Sri Ram College of Commerce and Columbia University. Even today, he continues to bring pride to our school. Please welcome on stage our super senior, Mr. Nishaad Shah.
Am I audible? Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. Today is a very special day for me, for two reasons. One, I'm speaking at my alma mater, Jamnabai Nursery School. And two, I'm the first ever athlete to be invited to speak at this event. I'm going to try my best. I'll be speaking about sacrifice, a word that we use to define the struggles that we make to get to where we aspire to be. I will also be talking about... Hello? Hello? I will also be talking about the sacrifices that not only me, but also my family and my parents made to ensure that I become a professional table tennis player. Table tennis was not the most widely accepted sport back when I started. Limited resources and lack of infrastructure made it very hard for anyone to pursue it as a career. But for some odd reason, I decided to give it a shot. I started playing in my building with my father and my grandfather when I was 8 years old. They saw that I had a knack for this game. There was something about the speed that really got to me. I tried my hand at various other sports, but none of them had the charm that this sport did. Just as a backstory, I was a very active child, and this was a sport that really calmed me down in a way. You'll probably hear this a couple of times today, but I wouldn't be standing here without the sacrifices that my parents and my family made for me. To start off, I would like to talk about the sacrifices that my father made. He is a very significant reason why I could pursue my sport of table tennis professionally. It's not easy for a parent to quit their jobs just to travel with their kids, and that's precisely what my father did. He saw the passion. He saw the passion that I had for the sport, and he told me one thing: do what you want in life, but make sure you're putting in your 100% into it, and stay true to yourself. And that's exactly what I did. The days when I felt demotivated, the only thing I thought about was, if my father could quit his job at the peak of his career, the least I could do is give it my all. The other thing that really kept playing in my mind was, he said to me, Nishaad, I did not have the same resources when I was a kid, due to financial restraints, and the time was different. But now, he wanted to live that journey through my accomplishments and what I do in life. And that really struck hard to me. My mother and my sister also made a huge impact on me behind the scenes, and the sacrifices that they made did not go unnoticed. My mother is a housewife, and my sister is a professional dancer. The days that I was traveling and my father was accompanying me, my mother made sure that my sister got what she needed to practice her dance daily. You can imagine how difficult it would have been for her to juggle between making sure that everything in the house was in order, making sure that my sister got what she needed to practice her dance daily, and also making sure that when I'm in town, everything is taken care of for me. The reason why I say behind the scenes is because I always had this mental peace of mind that whenever I'm at home, everything will be taken care of. Because as you know, mothers know it all, and I've seen it firsthand. My parents have sacrificed crucial years of their life by providing for us not only financially, but also by being physically present, and that makes a huge difference. Living your life as a professional athlete is not easy. You don't get to enjoy the usual things that your friends do, but that's also what makes it worthwhile and exciting. When I was competing at the highest level, I used to train twice a day, only finish my assignments and homework, and make sure I get sufficient rest for the next day. In a way, I was like a horse, blinded only to see in one direction: table tennis. I missed out on school life, picnics, school trips, FIFA nights with friends, and the list goes on. Even though I missed out on all this, I don't regret any of it. I still remember I was in the 10th grade, the year that I gave my board exams. But that's also the year when I had a real chance at making it to the Indian national table tennis team again. I knew the pressure that I had to juggle between sports and academics. So I approached the management at Jamnabai Nursery School, and I requested them to allow me to train and compete all year round. And I promised them that once I'm done with my tournaments, I'll make sure I study hard and fare well in the boards. I studied for 20 days before the exam, and I scored a 91%. And to top that, I also made it to the Indian national team. This accomplishment gave me the confidence that if I really put my focus on something that really matters to me, I can do anything I want in life. Today, when I speak to students and teachers from my school, I sense that respect and humility that they have towards me. Because even though they were not directly part of my journey, they've seen the struggle and the perseverance that I had in me to get to where I am today. Whenever I'm in town, I always visit school and the management, just in a way to thank them for allowing me to pursue my dream of becoming a professional table tennis player. These experiences and sacrifices led me to represent India for over 7 years in all age categories at different pro tours around the world. It also enabled me to get into Sri Ram College of Commerce, which is in Delhi. It's the best college for commerce and business in India, and one of the best colleges in Asia. Eventually, I got into Columbia University, where I pursued my master's degree. Now that I think of it, if I had only focused on academics when I was in school, I don't think I would get into these premier institutions. Mainly because they look for an all-rounder who has walked a different path in life that separates them from the rest. Playing an individual sport, it teaches you a lot about life in general. When you're playing a team sport, you have someone to cover up for your mistakes. But when you're playing a sport like table tennis, you're on your own. You are accountable for your mistakes, successes, and failures. The reason why I say table tennis specifically, of course I've played it, but also because the decision-making, the split-second decision-making is what it has really taught me about life. I used to sit alone, analyze my opponent's game before a game in my mind, and it helps you think, strategize, and execute your plans. It helps you make decisions about life that probably you would not be able to make if you were not confident about yourself. And that's what taught me that confidence is key. But apart from all these learnings, the most critical lesson for me was to how to handle failure. See, I think in a way, winning is easy. You can be really talented at something, and you can still win at it. But winning can also make you complacent, lazy, and less focused. But failure is what slaps you hard in the face and makes you realize what you really need to work on. I apply all these learnings in everything I do today, be it a job or be it life in general. Whenever I have to make a really hard decision about my life, even my parents know that he'll do something. He knows what he's doing. And that's what so many years of playing a sport has taught me. My life as a professional athlete enabled me to travel across the globe and to the remotest of places in India. I've met people from different walks of life, different countries, and different cultures, and the experience was life-changing. Initially, what seemed to be sacrifices for us as a family turned out to be great experiences which gave us happiness that we share together today. My advice to all the young students today is, like my father said, do what you want in life, but make sure you put your 100% into it. Once you do that, the ones around you will also try to help you in any way they can. And you too will experience the beautiful rewards of the sacrifices that you make. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk, sir. Here are a few questions from our audience online. Firstly, was it difficult to juggle between academics and sports?
Initially it was, yes. But like I said, the thing that sports teaches you, especially the sport that I was playing, table tennis, it teaches you to really focus on one thing at one time. The speed at which the ball travels, even one split second, and you miss the ball and the ball just goes past you. So that focus really helped me to divert my mind whenever I had to, switch on one switch, switch off the other one, and focus on the same thing.
All right, and the second question, did you ever feel restricted as you put all your effort in one sport?
I don't think so, because I've gotten probably everything I have today because of the sport. I got into the most premier institutions which I would never dream of getting into. I've traveled the world because of the sport. I'm known because of the sport. I know a lot of my fellow students know me as the TT guy, so I wouldn't want to change that.
Thank you so much for those answers.
Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Great. I'll have to remove this. Thank you.
A story. That's what drives humanity as a whole. One story can change the natural course of one's mind for the better. As long as there are listeners, stories will continue to inspire and amaze people. Now, the act of storytelling itself is one that is not uniform or fixed. Everyone has a different way of telling stories, and our final speaker for today, Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane, is a storyteller of the highest echelon, one of the integral players in the ingenious game of cinematic brilliance, a gifted award-winning writer, director, and producer. He has worked on several notable projects like Udaan, Lutera, Trapped, and AK vs. AK. He created and co-directed Sacred Games, Netflix's first Indian original series that took the entire OTT industry by storm. Please welcome our last yet dynamic speaker, Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Okay, can you hear me now? So I gotta eat the mic basically. Okay. My name is Vikramaditya Motwane. I am a writer, a producer, a director. I don't know in what order I'm what, but I'm all of those things. I've directed Udaan, I've directed Lutera, I've directed Bhavesh Joshi Superhero, I've directed a movie called Trapped, I've directed AK vs. AK. I don't think any of these students have seen any of these films. I'm also the co-creator and director of Sacred Games, which I believe you guys have seen without telling your parents. I'm an ex-student of Jamnabai, proudly, Tagore House, if anybody wants to know. And my daughter is also now a student at Jamnabai, also Tagore House, so like... Anyway, so okay. When I grew up, I was crazy about the movies, I was crazy about Amitabh Bachchan. You know, he was my hero. But there was no way that I would have actually joined the movies at that time. You know, I'm not from a film family. And movies at that point in time when you're studying in school is so far removed from your daily life. And back then, you know, now it's different. Back then, you finished your 10th and you went to college, you did art, science, commerce, and then if you were good at studies, you did engineering. If you were very good, it was like medical or IIT or something. So I was none of those things. So in the movies, when you write a script, right, there's something in a script called the inciting incident, and that's what always starts off a film. And the inciting incident in my life or my filmmaking journey it's a surprise, you'll never get it, you'll never guess it, was my parents' divorce, actually. And now, I was about 10 years old, I was about 10 years old. My mom's first job post-divorce was as a production manager. She worked with a cousin of hers. They would make documentaries and ad films. And she would take me on her set. And if you guys have ever been on a film set, if you're not a part of it, it's the most boring place in the world. It is like, because you go there and there's lights and there's people and it's hot. And they're doing things over and over and over again, and you're wondering why they're doing it over again. They got it perfectly fine the first time around. What's wrong with you? And I was like, I'm never going to be a part of this. I'll work with my father. I'll work in his factory. I'm never going to be a filmmaker ever. Cut to a few years later. It's 1993. I've passed out of JNS. I'm in Mitibai College. I'm literally sitting in the canteen and eating vada pav and having chai all day. And my mom is now, she has a partnership with this filmmaker called Sanjay Leela Bansali, who used to be an assistant director when she used to work with Shukla Das. Now the two of them have very enthusiastically started their own company together, and that company has failed miserably because neither of them know how to sell anything. They are artists, they have no idea how to go out there and sell a product for the life of them. My mom has an idea that she wants to do a talk show called Teen Talk. It's about how you talk to teenagers, discuss their problems, have them talk to you. So she had this idea and she's like, since all of you are doing nothing but sitting in college all day, completely vela, you will now work with me. So we became labor, cheap labor. And we helped her research and we helped her find the audience and we helped her, make the questions of how this show would work. And suddenly, my life seemed to have some sort of purpose because I was out there and I was, going out with all my friends and finding out like these questions and literally doing something. And then the first day of shoot arrives. It's at the Nanavati Hospital Auditorium. I don't know if you guys know, it's underneath over there. And it's amazing. We have 4 cameras, and it's kind of like this, there's this amphitheater kind of vibe, and there was a set, and there's 4 cameras, and lots of lights, and there's this buzz around, and there's 100 people there, and there's, catering for 100 people, and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And I was told, okay, you're going to sit in the control room, and you're going to watch the tapes, and you're going to make a note of the time code, at what time, questions come, and I was like, what the hell is time code? And that was the whole point, in a certain sort of way, because it was the discovery of something brand new. It's like something that I had never ever done in my life, and it was amazing. And that was the day where I was like, great, I'm going to be a filmmaker, forget engineering, this is my calling, right? And I was 17 years old, and I thought, okay, this is fine, I can make it by 22, in 5 years' time, I'm going to learn everything, I'm going to make my first movie when I'm 22 years old. And I actually made my first movie when I was 32 years old. So the 10 years in between, those years are kind of, in a sense, the most crucial years of my life. They're the years that I learned the most when I was doing nothing, when I was what you call a struggler. That's a filmy term. So I started working with this director called Manu Gargi. We used to do a show called Disney Club. We would shoot 1 day a week, edit 1 night a week. Manu let me, he let me edit the stuff by myself, and I gained a lot of experience at that point in time. So, what were my learnings? If I have to go back and saying, what did I learn in those 10 years? And I can say, yes, there is hard work and sacrifice, and as Nishant has said, those are the things that you have to do if you actually want to achieve something. That's a given. But personally, for me, there's 5 things that I picked up. There's knowledge, there's experience, there is patience, there is friendship, and I'll tell you the 5th thing at the end of this, so it'll connect everything up together. So I worked with Manu, I gained a lot of experience. Manu introduced me to the world cinema beyond Bollywood and Hollywood. So I started watching the movies of Ingmar Bergman and Woody Allen. So now I gained knowledge. And after that, I started to work with Sanjay Bansali. He was making a movie called Hum Dil De Chuke Sanam. I was his assistant director in that movie for 2.5 years. So that was knowledge plus experience. I then met this director called Deepa Mehta. She was making a film called Water. We were shooting in Banaras. Over there, I met this gentleman called Anurag Kashyap, who's another filmmaker. We hit it off amazingly well. We're the closest of friends today. So that was, knowledge, experience, friendship, all those things. After Water, and Anurag actually helped me, when he was making his first film, he allowed me to shoot his songs, he allowed me to do his sound design. So that was more of, gaining experience and gaining knowledge. I've also assisted Vishal Bharadwaj on his film that never got made. I came back to assist Sanjay Bansali on Devdas, and by now it's 2002. I've got a lot of knowledge, I've got a lot of experience. I'm all set. I'm now 25. I'm going to make my first film, and I take this script called Bombay Talkies to Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, which has been written by me and my friend Bhavani Iyer. Mr. Bachchan loves it. I think it's all set. I'm, going to go and make my film, and then I can't cast the second actor that I wanted in that film, and it's a year of just running around and getting rejected. And I'm now learning my first lessons in patience, which is a big, big thing. And then the years after that, after this are tough. So I was like, fine, but I'm not going to give up. So I go and I write a film called Udaan. Udaan is a film, if you guys have seen it, it's a story about a 17, 18-year-old boy who comes home from boarding school to, his father, who he hasn't seen in 8 years. He also discovers that he's got a younger stepbrother. I wrote this, everybody's like, why are you making this film? Like, what? It's like, this is Bollywood. And, but I was really determined to make that film. Something about that film, something about that story really, really spoke to me. And I was adamant, and I'm just like, I will make this film. And I almost did. In 2005, I went out, we were casting, we got locations, the finance was already there, and it fell out twice. It never happened twice. So again, I got back into it. I wrote about 5 or 7 films for myself. I wrote a film called Dhan Dhanadan Gol, which please don't see. I wrote a film called Devdi, which yes, you must see. And then I was, constantly doing, and I was shooting whatever I could. I would pick up, when I got married, I asked my in-laws, the typical thing when they ask you, what do you want for your wedding gift? And you expect that you'll get a nice watch. And I'm like, I want a movie camera. I want a video camera. So they gave me a video camera. They indulged me in that. I would shoot anything and everything. I would shoot friends' weddings. I would shoot, my wife's first Karwa Chauth. I would shoot. I did a short film. I was a cinematographer in 2 other short films. Basically gained all the experience. So by now, I'm like, I have experience, I have knowledge, I have patience. And I have friendship, and it's all there. So now what? So then it takes a little divine intervention. This is where divine intervention comes in. So this was by now 2009. It's early 2009. I'm ashamed to say it. I used to smoke back then, and my wife Ishika, who's who was my girlfriend from school actually. So if any of you just have hope. Can you hear me? Yeah, schools told me not to. Clearly, so sorry, yeah, I thought. And so she would tell me for the longest time, so like, you should quit smoking. I'm like, yeah, I'll quit smoking when I make my first film. And she'd roll her eyes and say, why don't you? Maybe if you quit smoking, you'll make your first film. And I'm like, haha, what do you know? Yeah? So it was 2009. I was working in Nikhil Advani's office, and he used to have an office on the 3rd floor of this bungalow in Pali Hill, Bandra. And one day I went to his office, and I walked up 3 flights of stairs, and I had to sit down. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is absurd. I'm 32 years old. I cannot possibly be having to sit down after climbing up 3 flights of stairs. And I decided at that moment, I'm going to quit smoking. Like cold turkey, best decision of my life. 2 days later, literally 2 days later, Anurag calls me up and says, do you want to make Udan? The AFD is released. The AFD it's done really well, and he's got producers who are willing to back him. So I said, of course I want to do Udan. He says, fine, it's great. Ishika was out of town at that time. My wife was out of town. And then I didn't tell her that I'd quit smoking because I'm like, I don't know, let's see. She comes back, and I tell her a couple of weeks later, and I'm like, Udan's getting made. So she's like, oh, great. And I'm like, I also quit smoking. And she says, what did you do first? What came first? I very sheepishly had to say that, yes, I quit smoking first. And then she's like, see? So yeah, I mean, one way of looking at it is, yes, there's luck, there's divine intervention, there's privilege, which is true. I've been very lucky in the fact that I never had to pay for rent or pay for a meal when I was struggling. My parents have been super, helpful. They've always supported what I wanted to do. But the other way of seeing it is that it's my knowledge, it's my experience that helped me write a script that somebody actually wanted to make. It's my friendship with Anurag that made him believe in me. And it's the patience that I had over all those years to end up waiting for a moment where I didn't give up the fact that I really wanted to be a filmmaker. And so why did Anurag believe in me to sort of like do that? And that brings me to the point, the 5th of the 5 points is it sounds like a cliche, and everybody will tell you this all your entire life, but it's been very hard for me to sort of like do it, is for me to be an individual, to be myself, to have my own stories to tell that are not derived from somewhere else. My own voice, my own authenticity has been a very tough struggle personally for me, and I think discovering that has been one of the greatest joys of my life, and I'm still doing it. I grew up in a joint family. I had elder cousins who were very cool. So when you look up at them, you want to be as cool as them, and then it makes you sort of like feel that, okay, then you have to try harder, you have to conform, you have to be somebody else you're not. And I love them all to death, but you tend to dress a certain way and have your hair a certain way, and it's taken me many, many years to just accept the fact that I like wearing black. And I like my hair like this, and it doesn't matter. But for a long time, you'd always try and be someone else. Until when you're finding my own voice, and I ended up finding the fact that, okay, these are the stories that I want to tell, and that's how it happened. And I used to be, a fairly lonely child, and I was, I could never have done this speech even 10 years ago, quite honestly. And I used to listen to, so when you are a bit of a loner, you tend to have obsessions, right? You tend to I used to listen to rock music. I used to be crazy about football, crazy about aeroplanes. Like I can tell an aeroplane in the sky. It's a useless talent, but yeah, there's those sessions. It's what you call crushes. Like I had a crush on football. I had a crush on aeroplanes. I had a crush on photography. And that was one of the things, in the 80s, you had these big cameras you take around film. There was no cell phones, obviously. And you'd shoot on film, which had to go and be processed. And it was expensive, and my father really indulged me. I don't know why. And the family would be like, oh, and my cousins would be like, okay, here comes Photo Lee to take the photos and stuff like that. It was fun. That obsession, or that crush, eventually at some point in time turns into love. You realize that there is a genuine love you've got for the art form. I love photography. And as I became better at it, there was a genuine, people would sort of look at it and say, wow, this is good stuff. Do you know this is good stuff? And I was like, maybe not. And that's the wonderful thing about humankind, right? It's like no matter how much of a loner you are, or a weirdo you are, or whatever it is, there's always somebody there who will knows you at a very, very deep level. And I've been very lucky that I've always found people like that my entire life. I had my friend Amiz in school who would listen to rock music with me. I had my cousin Rishit who would, be crazy about football with me and the music of The Who. And my wife Ishika, who is always, again, she's a photographer and she's always helped me with, all my work. My friend Bhavani, who wrote the Bachchan film for me because I had a crazy idea about this one director making his, whatever. And Anurag Kashyap, who's been, my closest friend and someone who's really believed in my talent and who I am because of me. And it's not because I'm trying to conform to anybody else. He's the one who's trying to tap into you and saying, what is the story you want to make? What are the things that you want to say? Don't go by what the industry is saying. And that really helped me to push to make a film like Udaan, which was against its grain at the time. And even today, you try and go out today to the market and say, I want to make a film about a 16-year-old boy coming home to his father. They'll be like, yeah, pagal hai kya? Why? But that's the push that I got from these people. My closest friends today, my closest collaborators, my closest friends are people from the industry. They are like-minded people. They are, like me, similarly, people who have obsessions, they have crushes, they love something, they believe in an art form, they believe in storytelling, and they collaborate with me because that's the place we love to be on a film set. And I think I'm the most truthful person when I'm on a film set, because it's the one place that kind of frees me up to be just who I am. And ask me to shoot for 200 days of the year, 16 hours a day, no problem, I'll do it happily because that's where, I kind of love to be. So, message to everybody, if there is anything in all of this, is it sounds very simple, that, you need to be yourself, especially in the creative world, and I think that's really, really important. And for whatever people say about the film industry, there's so much said about it's this way, it's that way, and there's, whatever, nepotism and, it's a sleazy place and all that kind of stuff. I have to say one thing, and this is for me and for a lot of my friends and a lot of my collaborators, it has been the most welcoming place in the world because it believes that individuality is important. It believes in you having to express yourself, whether you're a writer or a director or a producer or a cinematographer or a dancer or an actor or anybody. Your individuality is what matters. That's what makes people love you. That's what makes people just do a lot better. So yeah, if you guys want to be creative, you want to be anything, just be yourselves. And yeah, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, sir, for the talk. It indeed kept us gripped throughout. We will now be taking questions.
Hello? Yeah. Hi. That was very inspiring and very interesting. Your journey has been quite something. I want to know, success is one thing that is fabulous, but how did you deal with negative feedback, brickbats, bad reviews, and failure? Like, how did you deal with that part of things?
Failure is hard. Failure to deal with. Look, like anything else, you get used to it. Right? So there is a question of the first time it happens, yes, there is a certain amount of failure is hard to deal with. It's, you keep wondering what's wrong with you, what's wrong with your material, what have I done wrong? And there are moments when in my life when I felt, okay, maybe I should just go and make another Bollywood film. Yeah, do a rom-com, that's the easy thing to do, and sort of like, and do that. And you keep, but it's part of what I said, like when your support system tells you it's okay, just stick to what you've set out to do. I think that helps. So yes, failure is now, in hindsight, I can say the way to deal with failure the best is to give it a couple of days, wallow in whatever you have to do, get over it by day 3, go back and do what you want to do, because that's just how you bounce back. Bad reviews, honestly, you can never please everybody with your movies. There's no way that any movie of mine has ever said that in a room of 100 people that all 100 will say it's great. There's always going to be somebody who's going to say that, yeah, but, or I didn't like it or whatever, and that's completely fine. Everybody, I think, we are entitled to our opinion with anything else around there, and that's freedom of speech, and that's the whole point of it. I think the same thing applies to anybody talking about my movie. What irritates is when it's not constructive criticism, when it's, most of the time it is constructive. Most of the time I will always show my movies and my scripts to friends who will criticize them and, in the right sort of way. So you tend to know what's wrong and the audience you're kind of making it for. I don't think I've ever made movies for a mass audience of, the 300 crore box office. That's not my scene. So I know my audience in a sense. So I guess that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was truly inspirational.
Thank you.
I would now like to pass the mic to the licensee and primary organizer of TEDxYouth at JNS, Ms. Piyushi Ajwani, to share a few words into that.
Hello, everyone. To begin, when I was a little girl, I absolutely adored telling stories. But I had a curious little habit of inserting the 2 words "and suddenly" to every single tale, no matter how boring it was. That, juxtaposed with the fact that I spoke incredibly slowly, made me a very unconvincing speaker. And it caused my mother a great deal of concern. But today, several years later, I am no longer buck-toothed child, and my friends often complain that I speak way too fast. But the one thing that has remained constant throughout my life is the fact that I still love sharing and listening to stories, which is exactly why this platform, this position, and everything about this event was an absolute dream. I'd like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Managing Trustee Shri Jairaj Thakkar and members of the Trust family for providing us with such amazing opportunities and their best wishes, which truly push us to be the best versions of ourselves. I would like to thank the principal, Srimati Kalpana Patange, for teaching us that learning is something that begins outside the classroom and that extracurriculars and co-curriculars play an incredibly important role in a student's life. We thank ISC Coordinator, Srimati Rosana Thayed, Vice Principal, Srimati Rekha Nair, Vice Principal, Ms. Sonali Gandhi, and Headmistresses, Ms. Pamela Jacob and Ms. Sheetal Jain for their support in this endeavor. We also appreciate the efforts of Mr. Lad and Mr. Lala, as well as the IT department and the support staff. We are very grateful to our advisory committee, led by Mukund Harinathani, for ensuring that we're constantly on the right path. We would especially like to thank our teachers in charge, my co-licensee and our teacher in charge of curation and communication, Ms. Brinda Bose. Our teacher in charge of IT, Ms. Meenu Joshi. Ms. Geetan Bharadwaj of Art and Design. And our financial advisor, Mr. Mitesh Bhatt, for being our pillars of support. We are immensely grateful for your unwavering guidance throughout this process. Finally, we express our gratitude to our eminent speakers, Dr. Saagarika Ghoshal, Dr. Sewanti Limaye, Mr. Nishaad Shah, Mr. Aakarsh Sethi, plant people, and Mr. Vikramaditya Motwane. Thank you for trusting us and our platform with your stories, which are now immortalized in our hearts and minds, and are sure to inspire thousands around the globe. Thank you so much. Last, but certainly not least, I'd like to thank the team without whom this event would not have been a reality. The constant hard work and dedication throughout exams and interviews and applications showed us that this was the organizing committee of our dreams. I would now like to invite Ms. Brinda Bose to share a few words.
Hi guys, thank you so much for gracing the event, and to our lovely speakers, all of you, congratulations on your TED Talk. Now these are the leading sentences that is spoken at all the TED events, and why should Jamnabai Narsi School not do it? Tell me. Okay, we at Jamnabai Narsi School believe in giving a platform not only to us, the teachers, the students, and also the locally talented people around us, to voice out their concerns, to voice out their beautiful, creative ideas worth sharing. Okay, so here's cheers to the 5th edition of TEDxYouth at JNS. Thank you so much, and OC, I love you. Thank you.
All right, okay, we will now play the TEDxYouth at JNS behind the scenes video so that you can get a brief understanding of what exactly went into curating this event. Honestly, thank you so much for being here, and it has been an absolute honor being your licensee and primary organizer.
I got a feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling that tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. That tonight's gonna be a good night. A feeling.
May I request you all to please stand up for the school anthem, followed by the national anthem.